sweet 16 and never been kissed, punched, or chased up her back.
Conrad Harrigan, the father of MobLand played by Pierce Brosnan, has never been a very heroic figure, but after one pivotal incident involving Harry D'Souza's young daughter Gina, he is now unlikable. Conrad, the Dread Harrigan, was a notoriously dangerous and, as a result, extremely successful gun and drug runner, once a feared crime lord on the streets of London. MobLand starts when he is nearing the end of his mob boss career, and it's clear that he is losing control of his family, his empire, and himself. Despite being career criminals and killers, Conrad Harrigan and his cunning wife, Maeve Harrigan, played by Helen Mirren, have been seen as de facto protagonists in MobLand, which centers on the Harrigan crime family and their accomplices. However, it was practically established that Conrad wasn't a guy worth supporting once he confessed to killing his rival's wife, Veron Stevenson, and then summoned his archenemy to rub his nose in her death. Any hope of redemption was dashed when Conrad had a brief conversation with Gina D'Souza in the middle of MobLand Episode 6. What was Conrad suggesting to Gina in MobLand? Conrad summons all of the Harrigans, their families, and their closest friends to the Harrigan Manor in the Cotswolds after Veron Stevenson is killed. Among them are Tom Hardy's character, Harry D'Souza, his wife Jan, Joanne Froggatt, and Gina, Teddy Allen, who is 16 years old. Conrad sits down beside Gina, who is sulking on the manor's back stairs, to talk poetically and learn more about her. The topic of who protects Gina is brought up throughout the talk. Gina and her mother both claim to protect themselves. A woman needs to protect her, according to Conrad, who then suddenly leans in and says, "I'll protect you." Although he could theoretically mean it in a fatherly manner, his past interactions with women suggest that it was much more inappropriate. Throughout MobLand, it has become clear that Conrad is a serial adulterer who younger women. In Episode 5, Kevin disclosed that Conrad had an affair with his current wife, Bella, who was 20 years old when he was in his 50s. Serafina Harrigan is the result of his adultery. Given the context, it's pretty obvious that Conrad's offer of protection was essentially his creepy old man's way of flirting with Gina, which is particularly revolting given that she's a minor. It speaks not only to simply how inappropriate he is as a person, but also how deranged and arrogant he is to attempt anything like that, and believe there will be no repercussions. MobLand highlights how sad and scary Gina's story is. Given that she has had almost no control over her situation, Gina D'Souza is arguably the most tragic character in the entire series. She was actually dragged into the house of an old man who believes it's acceptable to make fun of a 16-year-old girl after being pulled out of a test she had studied a deal for. She has no control over her father's identity or the work he does, and she is constantly in danger because of it. She got drawn into a real mafia battle, but it's just the world she was born into. When one considers that she doesn't even have a decent relationship with her father, and at best has a poor one with her mother, her narrative becomes even more terrible. Harry appears to be unable to be a loving husband and father because of his many comings and goings. Gina is clearly crushed when he leaves in a helicopter for Antwerp, without even telling his daughter that he loves her, even if Jan reminds him. Gina in MobLand may be doomed because she is only a victim of her situation, and in most wars, the innocent suffer. Conrad is increasingly a villain in MobLand. Conrad showed right from the beginning of MobLand who he was, allowing his wife to goad him into killing his oldest friend in cold blood. That was almost forgivable from the audience's viewpoint. In the criminal underworld, crime bosses kill disloyal employees. It's not unexpected, but Conrad Harrigan is now the closest thing MobLand has to a real villain after his disgusting phone call to Richie, mocking his wife's death, and his awkward chat with 16-year-old Gina D'Souza.